It was heartbreaking to see this past week during the Olympics, the great champion, Simone Biles, have to withdraw from many of the events that she prepared for in the Olympics in a very painstaking way these years in preparation. It was, I think, a moment in which she came across her own limitations as a human being, realizing that she came to a point where she could not go on any further. But what was equally distressing is some of the criticism she received by some of the cable news network individuals who really did not have any tolerance at all for human weakness, even one of them saying that she brought it on herself, it was her own fault. She should have dealt ahead of time with the trauma she suffered because of the abuse that was leveled against her by a team doctor some years ago when she was a teen. It was a heartless analysis of the situation, an intolerance for how we all have our human weaknesses and moments in which we come up against our limitations. Today in the readings, we hear of Elijah who wants to die because he can't go any further. He doesn't want to acknowledge that human weakness is, in fact, part of human life. The same too is with those who are rejecting Jesus. They see him as a weak individual, as someone who's just a human being, and yet he asks them to, in some way, embrace their humanity that includes even death. For he says that he gives his flesh for the life of the world as bread. And of course, to do that, he must die. That is the core of what we believe as Christians, that Jesus sent his Son into the world not to be a success by human standards, for Jesus was indeed a great failure. All of his apostles and disciples abandoned him. He was convicted as a criminal and sentenced to death. And he was one also that people derided in his claim that the Father was going to be with him through every moment in his life. Jesus was a failure by human standards. And yet what he came into the world to do is to teach us how to accept our humanity, to the point that he offered his humanity, even death, to the Father, which then was a moment for God, with his powerful grace, to bring him to new life. That is what we celebrate in the Eucharist every time we come together around the table of the Lord. He invites us to bring our humanity, our suffering, our illness, our weakness, yes, even our sinfulness, and join it to his sacrifice, so that we can understand that the Lord brings us into the world so that we can have that sacrifice of all that we are as human beings for the salvation of the world. And in entering into that sacrifice of Jesus, he transforms our weakness, our frailty, our illness, all the things in life that speak of human limitations, so that we can in turn be supportive of those who are also weak in the world. That is the true test of how we receive the grace of the Eucharist. Has it so transformed us that we accept the weaknesses of others because we know that it is about embracing humanity that Jesus comes into the world to teach us. It's important for each one of us, as we come here at the Eucharist today, to think about where our weaknesses are and to bring all of that to the Eucharist that we celebrate and join them with the sacrifice of Jesus. Simone Biles was a great champion and is a great champion on the field of sport. But she also, I think, taught us this past week what it means to be a champion in the kingdom of God, an individual who's willing to embrace her humanity, and teaching us as well, when we do so, the Lord redeems all of that for the salvation of the world. And so let us today offer in this Eucharist all the weaknesses that we have, the limitations that we suffer, the frailty that is ours as human being, and embrace it, not run away from it like Elijah wanted to, but rather offer it in union with the sacrifice of Jesus in the Eucharist, so that we can become more attuned to the sufferings of others in the world. And it is then that we become champions in the kingdom of God.